So welcome everyone to the July Diamond Valley Writers Guild meeting. I'm going to start off with asking anyone who may have had a special occurrence this month, a publication, an acceptance by the editor or agent. Maybe you started a project, finished up a project, hit a milestone in a project. So just Daniel's raising his hand. Let's start with him. What's up, Daniel?
Be better if he wasn't muted.
No, yeah, I had a mini milestone in that I ended up hiring Kathy Macias to do a final edit on my draft of my novel, my first novel, Pipeline. So she has gotten into it, and she says she has trouble putting it down. She's real excited about it.
That's good.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's because I made my first payment on her fee, or you know, we'll find out what her comments are after, and that will give me an indication. But I'll take it at face value for now.
Yeah.
And that's my little guy saying hello.
Fabulous. Anybody else have something they want to report?
Yeah, I do. Me.
Choose Lynn.
Last November, we did the NaNoWriMo, and I wrote a story, a novel. And now, as of today, I just got approval from Amazon that it's on pre-order now. It's pre-order status, that it'll launch on August 1st. So, I mean, that's like 6 months, 8 months between, you know, writing a book. That I was kind of sloppy too with my timing. So if I did a better job, I could do 2 books a year that way. But anyway,
What's the title?
The title is We Did This Once Before. And it's about a middle-aged woman, because, you know, I only write about middle-aged and older people. And she moves back with her mother in Florida to help out. And then she finds out that she's trapped all over again. She has to fight her way out.
That's funny.
So
if I remember correctly,
that has no relationship to your own life.
Huh, oh God, my mom can't read this.
So what was the title again, Lynn?
We Did This Once Before.
Sounds like a song title too.
Could be.
When the movie comes out, I can hear it now.
Yeah, you betcha.
That's great.
That's great. If I remember correctly, several years ago, you had said your goal was to write more than 1 book and publish a year. So yes. It sounds like you accomplished that with that one.
Well, this will be the 1 book in 2021, but I do have 80% finished, a collection of short stories that I've asked Kathy Macias also if she'll be available in a couple of months to edit that. So that's a way of holding my own feet to the fire. And I hope to publish the 2nd book in 2021. So I'll have 2 books. Yay. So that'll be a total of 7.
Anybody else have any milestones that they want to report?
Yes, Ellen got my anthology of short stories on Kindle, and we're working on the paperback.
Yay!
Yay! About time, Jolene. How exciting! How exciting!
Karen,
anybody else? I know Karen's got something. Right, Karen?
Can I just interrupt? The name of Jolene's book is Oddballs and Other Folks.
What?
Hey, wait, one more time.
Oddballs and Other Folks.
Okay, thank you.
And having read several of the stories, they are really good. So when it comes out, I recommend everybody get their copy.
Yeah, Lynn's got a unique voice.
Good name.
That's all that.
Okay, someone's got some background noise going on.
Maybe mute us all except Karen.
All right, hold on. I'm trying to do that.
We often have that problem with Sandy's connection.
Okay, let me go. Karen, go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. I muted everybody.
Okay. Well, my goal this year was to get all the pieces of books published, and so that would be 4. And the 4th one is going to Kathy Macias to be edited in another week. Yeah. But most exciting for me is my book about my special grandson. The name of the book is More for Less. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before. It now is available in ebook and audio and in print. So that's taken a while, but that's really fun. Thank you. Thank
Tell
you.
us the name. What's the title?
More for less.
Thank
That's a
you.
great title. Karen, did you do the audiobook yourself, the narration?
No, I did not.
Okay,
I know
anybody else?
everybody keeps asking me why I don't, but I just didn't want to do it.
Anybody else have something they want to report, to brag about, or, nope. So is there anyone here for the first time? I don't think so. I'm looking at everyone's names. If there's somebody here that's never been in one of our meetings, unmute and say hello and introduce yourself. Tell us what you write. No, everybody's been here? Okay.
Hi.
Dennis
Hi.
got his
Huh,
hand up.
Sorry, this is Bonnie Dillabo, and my identity comes across as the One Web Woman for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. And I am totally new to this group, and I don't live anywhere near any of y'all. I am in Eastern Washington. I've been all over the place, but I got recommended to you by a librarian in your system that this could be a really fun group for me to be involved in. I write science fiction that reads like fantasy. I have a trilogy out, another book coming out in November, and in the series that I'm writing. And I'm really loving the interaction between y'all. It's beautiful. You guys obviously know each other and support each other, and that makes me really happy. And I'm really excited to learn more about what you're going to be talking about today. So
Can I
Well, welcome,
jump
welcome.
in? Can I jump in?
Sure.
Did you say your name's Bobby?
Bonnie,
Bonnie.
Bonnie, what's your last name?
Bonnie K.T. Dillabo, Dillaboughh, like a
I
dill.
remember seeing your name. Yeah,
You remember seeing my name?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And where can we reach you online?
I am available. Well, I'm on Facebook, but also my website is dimensionalallianceheadquarters.com.
I think
Is
everything is in the
headquarters-
Google contacts. I put everything in Google contacts. I
Okay,
think.
good.
So yeah, and
Welcome.
you guys are awesome. I'm really excited to have been invited to be part of this group.
We're glad you're
Welcome.
here.
Welcome, welcome. That's great.
Here.
Anybody else? I think everyone else has been here before. Nothing else? Okay, Sandy.
Dennis.
What?
Dennis, you're ignoring Dennis.
I don't see Dennis. Where's
Oh,
Dennis?
he's down there and he keeps raising his hand.
Oh, hi, Dennis. I didn't, here, unmute, Dennis. Unmute,
He's skinny.
unmute, Dennis. There you go. Nope, you're still muted. Uh-oh. How come he's muted?
Try again.
You're still muted. Wait a minute. Okay, let me see if I can unmute him from here. I should be able to unmute him from here. Bear with me, guys. Sorry. There it is. Unmute. It says I can only ask you to unmute. It won't let me unmute you.
Is that an iPad?
Sorry, okay, Dennis, if you figure out how to unmute later.
Oh,
Oh, no. Can anybody read that? I can't read that. Can anybody read that?
Hold it really close.
Uh,
But
on
okay.
iPad.
Yeah, we see
On
that. It says
iPad.
Dennis on iPad.
Oh,
Be typed into the chat, maybe.
If you can figure out a way to unmute later, we'll come back to you on that, okay? All right, cool. So play with your settings or something. Anybody else out there? Nope. Okay, to Sandy. Go ahead and unmute, Sandy. You have a tip for us. Do you not this month? You're muted. Why is everybody having trouble unmuting? This is not good.
I can unmute.
Yeah, I don't
Sandy,
know.
text me your story. Oh my gosh.
There, okay, try now.
say something.
Try now, try unmuting now. Dennis, you try unmuting now too. I think I had something clicked wrong.
We're all off.
Huh,
Call a
that's
jet.
not good. Mary, can you unmute?
See if Sarah can speak.
Huh.
See if we can hear.
I can unmute. I just did.
Okay, so I don't know why.
And I,
Okay.
Look at, when I do this, it says the host is not allowing me.
Well, it says I'm not allowing you guys to unmute. I guess I don't want to hear from anybody. Let's see if I can figure this out. I'm sorry.
go over there under, let's see, under participant, let's see, where is that anyway?
I've got everything unchecked. It says allow participants to unmute themselves. Try now.
There, I can unmute
Okay,
myself.
I
now.
unmuted now.
Okay, good. All right. Sorry. I've not run one of these meetings before, so my apologies. Okay, so Sandy, try it again. Try unmuting. See if you can unmute. There. Yes, now you're unmuted. Yay, talk.
Kept clicking and clicking. It was like, no, no, no. I'm going to share a tip today that I have not exactly experienced myself. I've been reading a book called Fight Right, W-R-I-T-E, How to Write Believable Fight Scenes. And I found it interesting that you use all the same techniques you use in any kind of good writing, but when it comes to fight scenes, they're the single hardest character interaction to write. They can be very boring to read because people are accustomed to movies that allow audiences to take a passive stance and have the action just wash over them. Where in contrast to a novel or a story that you're writing, you have to engage the reader's and imagination and get them involved. If you use the fight scene to reveal necessary information about characters that can give the reader a glimpse into the character's soul or essence and not just show off their fighting skills, that's a good thing to do. Good fight scenes improve characterization, and I wrote down the some of the questions that they posed. Why does the character make the choices that they make in the fight? How does each choice reinforce their characterizations? How does each choice impact their internal and or their external goals? Is this conflict getting the character closer or further away from their goals? What are the stakes for each character? What do they stand to win? What will they lose? What type of fighter is the character? What are their physical or mental abilities? Not all our characters are going to be trained assassins that can execute various kinds of fancy fighting. So your character may just be a teacher who's got to stop a fight on the school grounds, or couples in a bar and they're being annoyed. Anyway, leave as much to the reader's imagination as you can in these action scenes. The pace requires short, simple sentences to communicate the immediacy and the suddenness of the conflict. It even says to mix a bit of action with dialogue. However, you do not want them doing any kind of reflecting during a fight, because that's very unlikely that they're going to be pondering as they're biff bang pow. So that's not a good thing to do. The perspective, the key is to thrust the reader into the action experience. The fight through a character, experience the fight through a character, not several characters. So the reader wants to be focused on or invested in one character. Be brief unless it's a battlefield war epic. Of course, use active, not passive voice. Using the senses in fight scenes offers a rare opportunity to do more with the sound, the touch, and the smell. You know, kind of like sweat and stuff like that. So we don't often use those as often in our regular story writing. Context, make the stakes clear to the reader and make sure they care about at least one person in the fight. In fight scenes, the reader is more invested and interested when the interactions have consequences. So, for example, if character A is chasing character B and readers know that the stakes of character B escaping, the scene is better. If readers care about character A and character B and have a preferred outcome to the chase, now the scene really matters. When the fight is over, what happens next? How did the characters fare? Like any scene, ensure your fight scene moves the story forward. Everything should move the story forward. And an easy method to find out if the fight scene moves the story or not, delete it. Then read the scene before what your fight scene had been and the scene after. And if you can still make sense of what happened, then delete it or keep it, I'm sorry. And if you can't, then, and it makes no real transition in the story, delete it. So good fight scenes enhance your story, but if it's long, blow by blow of the movements and stances, good chance the reader will skip over much of it to get back to the story. Amen.
I have a question.
I
Go
have an
ahead.
answer, I hope.
Okay, well, I thought those were really, really good tips, as all of your tips are. And the thing about the 10 or so questions that each of, like the fight scene would reveal about the characters, is that something you can send to me so I can link to it on the blog post summary?
Yeah, I could copy and paste it and send it to you.
That sounds good. Thanks very much. So I'll include that on the blog post.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm writing send to Lynn because I don't have those memory foam sole shoes where I remember what I went into the kitchen for or to send an email.
Thank you,
I
Sandy.
I'd like to say it's a great one, Sandy, but I also want to say that the best fight scene I've ever read in a book was written by a woman. It's Joyce Carol Oates, and You Must Remember This.
Ah,
And if anybody wants to read it, take a look at that. It is an incredible sequence. One of the characters is a boxer, and it's the best fight scene I've ever read in a book. And it's interesting that it is by a woman.
this Fight Right book I was talking about is also written by a woman who is skilled in a lot of the fighting arts, and she goes into careful detail about what each fight is, and if you do this, then that will happen. And so it gives some good cause and effect of how to fight if you're unskilled, how to fight. Obviously, if you are a black belt in something, you know how to fight. But it's been an interesting book. I haven't finished it yet, but I found it fun that she is a female as well. So
I know Writer's Digest gave it very high marks when I've seen it in the magazine and reviewed and stuff online, so.
she's
Yes,
been
Mary.
doing some blog posts for Writer's Digest on their writing tips or their writing something. So that's there too. She does.
Mary,
that.
did you have something to add to that?
I wanted to share, I had actually met Joyce Carol Oates. I was surprised to see her. I was at a mystery convention with my husband, who a lot of you have met. She writes with under a pen name, a bunch of mysteries. I want to say her pen name is Rosamund Smith, something like that. I might have it a bit off, but yeah, she's just an American treasure. Also want to mention that one of the things that's tricky about writing a fight scene, if you've never been in a fight, like, so my husband with his long law enforcement career has been a lot. And if you guys ever want to send a scene to him for help, he's always happy to help people get that.
That's nice.
And for sure, the short sentences is critical and definitely moving the plot forward. I'd say those two things are probably the most key from that, in my opinion. So I'll put his
Good.
email address in the chat too, in case you want to bug him with your fight scene.
Thank you. Better warn him because we probably have a lot of fighters in this group.
He loves that. He loves helping other writers, especially with that kind of stuff.
That's funny. Okay, let's go back to Dennis, because now that Dennis can unmute, he didn't get a chance to say all the wonderful things he's been up to in the last 30 days. Can you unmute?
No.
You still can't? Oh, that's too bad.
No, but Howard
Okay,
has.
can I make a bunch of stuff up about you? Would that be fun? I could do that. Okay, well, I guess you have to save it for next month's meeting then. All right.
Howard had a
Michelle,
Yes.
we could
Hi,
do
Howard.
that. We could do the little thing where, you know, how many syllables, and we could try to guess what Dennis has to say.
Charades.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Charades would be fun. Howard, did you want to say
Sounds
something?
like
Yeah, I wanted to add something on the fighting. Since I write crime, action, adventure, I have fights in my books. And one of the things I do is I go on YouTube and I put in the type of combat that I'm looking for. And then you can actually see people practicing it. You know, it's not, you know, they're not really killing each other, but, you know, when they're fighting, you know, how do you fight with a knife? You can look that up on YouTube and you can find multiple examples. Or, you know, if it's a gun, you know, what should you do? But the other thing I rely on is in every group I've been in, there are always guys who know a lot about guns and the type of gun, the caliber, the bullets, whatever. It wouldn't do this, it would do that. So there's always a strong male input about guns and sometimes knives too. But the YouTube is a great resource if you want to actually see how someone would go about fighting like that. And then you just have to characterize it and summarize it just briefly in the scene that you're writing.
Yeah, you can learn
No.
about elevators that way too.
Yeah.
Or from a wino.
We do sort of, as writers, I do think we live in a information golden age for research purposes.
You
You
are
know,
right.
20, 30 years ago, if you wanted to research something, you'd have to sign up for a class and go for several weeks to even figure it out. I know personally, when I was working on my fantasy novel, I actually got involved in a historical recreation group because I wanted to know what it felt like to wear armor, put on armor, hit other people with swords. And then I ended up doing that for like 15 years. So it became a hobby, but I actually had to physically go do that. I had no research to go watch it or find it on the internet. So it's kind of, it really is a golden age, I think, for us personally. All right, anybody else on any of those related topics of fighting, right? No, Sandy, thank you.
you're welcome. I did find there are some other books at the, this is everything you need to know about writing fantasy weapons. There is a book for that. What you need to know about writing injuries or how to write an epic battle scene. I probably won't need those, but for those of you who do, there are resources out there.
I think,
It is.
this is Bonnie.
Yes,
I
Bonnie.
think that probably that was the biggest challenge in writing my novels is I knew that there would be combat and fighting and those kinds of things. And although I am a veteran, I'm a bit of a pacifist myself. And so I had to do exactly what you said. I went online and I was quarterstaff fighting was one of the things that was going on. And so I watched quarterstaff match after quarterstaff match just to kind of get a feeling for it. But you know what's really gratifying to me right now is, Sandy, when you were listing those things, I had some of my readers say, I love your fight scenes, but I didn't know why. And so
Okay.
now those things, you're going through the list, I'm going, check mark, check mark, check mark. So that felt really, really good. But I've got some new challenges in these fight scenes. So I'm going to have to go ahead and purchase that book. But thank you for introducing us to that.
You're welcome.
Yep, Sandy is definitely one of our guild treasures of wealth of information, and she's a researcher, so we can always rely on her to bring a good tidbit to the meetings. Straitjackets. Cheryl, would you like to say a little bit about straitjackets?
Hi, yes. I thought maybe you already passed by. I woke up 2 hours late from my alarm, and you can't catch up on a little mini farm when you're that late. It's terrible. So, Ellen, jump in if I leave something out. Basically, the editors met on Thursday, and we have I sent out yesterday edits to all those who submitted. So I'm waiting to hear back. We're trying to get the magazine out by the end of July or in the first few days of August. We have some fun submissions this time. It's great. One thing we noticed, and Michelle, thank you. I think you sent me 2 stories that had gone to the webpage instead of to our
Yeah, the Guild Gmail collected some of your stories this time.
Yeah, and so we're going to either try to put in some kind of big print of where to send it when we put in calls for submissions, or Ellen's going to sweep through there. But thank you for forwarding those.
No problem.
Yeah, so thank you. That's about it. Ellen, is there anything, or Joe, anything else?
Okay. A side note for anyone who may be new to our meetings, Straight Jackets is our Guild online literary magazine. It is very high quality, beautiful artwork, just lovely. And you must be a paid member in order to submit your work to Straight Jackets, which segues into my little spiel on membership. We have currently 62 paid members, which is still low, but I think it's very good based on coming out of a pandemic year. I think when we get back live again, even though we'll still be trying to continue a Zoom presence, we do intend to go back live at the library. I think that those numbers will rise again as people, know we're back in business, as it were. But it's real easy to join. It's not mandatory. You're more than welcome to come to our events, our meetings. The only thing that you can't do is vote in our officers' elections, submit stories to Straight Jackets, or have your books included on our website. Those are all huge benefits. In fact, I'm going to put into the chat all the benefits of joining. It's only $20 to join. And I'll put an information on how to do that. I think almost everyone here is a member, but again, it's not mandatory. We'd love the support because we do have ongoing expenses, the websites for not only the Guild, but for Straight Jackets, Gmail, Zoom meeting costs. There's a lot of little costs that we absorb, and without membership, we can't pay them. So that's about it, but we'd love to have you as a member if you haven't paid your dues yet. $20 a year. Did I say a month? It's $20 a year.
Something in, Michelle.
Yeah.
So this is for Michelle, who is on her iPhone and is walking around. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm really getting dizzy watching you around. It's very distracting. So if you could fix that, we'd appreciate it, Michelle.
So Michelle with 1 L, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Michelle with 2 L's. We've been chatting on email. Can you, when you walk, just blank the image? Can you unmute? We can't hear you.
Could turn off her video.
Yeah.
There.
I
Okay.
apologize. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave and then join again with me not being visual, because I want to pay ultimate and utmost respect for your meeting right now. So I have to figure that out. So I'm going to leave temporarily and come back without this disturbing you, because that is the last thing I want to happen.
Thank you.
Okay, great. But please come back in, please. I'm so glad you're here.
You guys are adorable. You guys have such great information. I can tell, because I've been studying this and involved with this with all different kinds of writing groups for maybe 10 years. So this is fascinating. I love how down to earth you all are. I love how honest you guys all are. I love this dialogue. I just love it.
And we love your house.
So let me do this. Let me shut up, get off. And
wait. Michelle, before you go anywhere, can you just look down at the bottom of your screen where it says stop video?
Yeah, will that do it?
Yes.
That's all you have to do.
Oh,
and then mute.
And you have tech brilliant people too.
Go ahead and try it out now. See if it works.
Then you don't have, there she, uh-oh. we
Okay,
lost
now
her.
you gotta, now that she's still, can you hear
Is
us,
she there?
Michelle?
Yeah, so I'm gonna mute myself now so I can just
Perfect.
listen to all of you. Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you so
thank you.
much. Thank you.
Michelle,
Cool.
while we're on membership, I
Yes.
need some information from members. We had 3 checks with signatures I couldn't read. I need to know who is Notions in Motion.
Anybody
Anybody?
know who Notions
That's
and
me.
Motions is?
It's Bonnie Dillabo. Is Notions into Motion. Yep,
So
that's
it's
me.
Bonnie.
It's Bonnie.
Oh, Bonnie Dillabo. Okay.
Yeah, she's already in the Gmail contacts.
Okay, I also need to know who 2-Bit Studio is. Anybody?
That's Greg.
Great. Oh, okay. Wonderful signatures, just can't read them.
I've worked very hard to get it that illegible.
And do you know if VOS and Associates, is that Robert Martin?
Isn't
Anybody?
that Victor Swasek?
Oh,
Oh, yeah. It's probably Victor.
okay. All right, thank you,
If
everybody.
you want
That-
to email, if you want to email me that, I can check the Google contacts. It'll say in there.
I appreciate the information, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Michelle,
Yes.
can I ask PL Mason what her first name is? What, Penny? Okay, all right.
You
'cause
can unmute Penny if you want to unmute, you can. You've been on our meetings before. It's not her first meeting, but she is a new member.
Yeah, and I didn't
Yes.
address my email to her. I didn't want to say hi, PL.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's all right.
I should sign it Penny. I'm sorry. It's
That's
Penny.
okay. No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, well,
Okay, thank you for asking. Okay,
Welcome, Penny.
thank you.
Okay, so I think it's time to segue to our speaker. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. Before she starts talking though, if you have a question during Mary's presentation, go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. You can put questions into the chat if you don't want to speak, and I can repeat your questions for you. But I'm going to try to monitor that and interrupt her throughout until she tells me to stop interrupting her.
And I have a
With that-
question.
Yes.
Thank you. I have a question. When you say raise your hand, do you mean like I do?
Well,
Or do you mean
actually,
hit
if
the
you
little
go down,
emoticon?
yeah, if you go down to the bottom, you can actually, most everyone has a little icon to click on that is a raised hand. See Lynn's, look at Lynn's picture. And that is so easy to see. Someone doing this, I might think there's a fly. Yeah, I don't know what you're doing. But you get little emotion things, raise a hand, just something to tell me that you'd like to be called on. Ah, heart, that's sweet. Yeah. Bye, Jim. Jim's leaving us.
Oh, no.
Bye,
There he
Jim.
goes.
Hey, if we
Okay.
do raise our physical hand, do we have to make the same face that Lynn just made?
I think it would be wise. Yeah. So anyway, all right. So with that,
Okay.
Lynn, would you like to introduce our speaker for today?
I would be very happy to. And Mary, go ahead and unmute yourself so that you can chime in if you want to correct anything I'm
If
saying.
everyone else could mute, please, so that we don't end up with any inadvertent sounds. Just mute. So Karen, you're not muted. George, you're not muted. If you guys could mute, and then if you want to talk, you can unmute when we call on you. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I am very excited to have Mary St. John-Putnam as our speaker today. Mary, raise your hand, wave, tell everybody where you are. Okay. Mary has spent years working in technology for such organizations as NASA, Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and Amazon. I mean, when I heard that, I thought this girl must be pretty smart. Okay. In 2009, recognizing that she enjoys working with humans more than computers, she switched from engineering to marketing. Within those organizations, she did video production, blogging, social media, writing, and technical training. But then 10 years later, in 2019, Mary left corporate life. Since then, she and her husband, David Putnam, most of you guys know Dave, he's the former cop who turned into a best-selling author. She and Dave have helped other authors tell and sell their stories. doing online media and book promotions. Mary enjoys finding fun and creative ways to publicize your books, whether through technical online methods or by graffitiing the side of her house, which, yes, she really did. It's awesome. I think you painted it though at this point, right? You're not going to show us your house.
Sure, I can show you that.
Okay, yeah, she did it. She graffitied the side of her house to publicize Dave's book, right? That was Dave's book, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so anyway, in this presentation, Mary is going to share with us how to select the most effective and appropriate tools for online marketing, as well as how to make the most of your time and dollars based on your personal comfort level, and to put the fun back into marketing fundamentals. So everybody, please welcome Mary St. John-Putnam. Yay!
Aw, thank you guys. This is a great group. And yeah, just a little shout out to, of course, Lynn is awesome, as you all know, but Karen Robertson, I have to say thank you again. She was absolutely critical in getting Dave's book into, the hands of a awesome publisher after, probably half a dozen agents and several decades of trying to break into a traditional publisher, which he really wanted, because he wanted a hardcover and so forth. And of course, that whole traditional publisher versus self-publishing is a whole other conversation that we could talk about for a long time too. I do have a little outline here that I'm going to go through, and if anybody wants this handout, it's just 4 pages of notes and whatnot. I'd be happy to send those out later if anybody wants copies of notes, and I think Lynn's going to include a link as well in her blog post afterward. But before we get started, just by a show of whichever kind of hand you want to raise, how many of you guys already have a book out and you're trying to sell more copies? Is that most everybody? I think it's quite a good chunk. Okay, just seeing. And does everybody have a website by a show of hands? No, some people have websites, some not so much. Does anybody have an agent? Okay, one, yeah, because one thing about marketing yourself, especially if you're looking for a traditional publisher, is marketing yourself to an agent is also something to keep in mind. So we can talk about that a little bit. And of course, having a website helps, because they're gonna Google you when they first hear about you. And how many of you love speaking in public? Wow, like a few. I know Karen does. Yeah, and how many of you do speaking in public in spite of the fact that you don't necessarily want to, but feel you have to? Anybody else? Sandy? Okay, that's my husband. Yeah, okay, a couple of you. So yeah, I do think it's a little bit easier to do it with Zoom, because you can not wear pants. I won't comment on whether or not I'm wearing pants right now. Shoes. Okay, have pants, no shoes. All right, so one thing, when Dave first got his lovely traditional publisher, they had a person who was dedicated to marketing as part of that organization, which was great. Of course, you still have to do a lot of your own marketing. But one thing that he said that I thought was a good thing to hang on to was, if 3 things you're going to remember about marketing. You can't do all of it, right? It's going to be an infinite amount of time and money sunk into marketing if you try to do everything. So pick what you're good at and you enjoy the most. And also, it's supposed to be fun. That's the 3rd thing. So for me, I find some of the marketing is a great way to procrastinate actually doing writing. Like, if you can see my little earrings here. Does anybody see I do all kinds of crazy stuff. And of course, I'm going to use my husband as an example, because he was the one where I got started on all of this. And I majored in physics and computer science, not marketing. I learned the marketing along the way. But if I had majored in marketing, so much of that would have changed since then, right? And actually, one more question for you guys. Can anybody tell me the difference between inbound marketing and outbound marketing? Is that a thing that we know? Okay, so one of the things I have learned as I self-taught about marketing, so inbound marketing is when people find you, like find your website. That's where it's great to have good content, whether it's on social media or your website itself, as opposed to outbound marketing, where you're sending an email, or my husband is into, let's call it old school, not old fashioned, but he likes to send out physical postcards and stuff. That's outbound marketing, right? What's wonderful about inbound marketing or passive that's just sitting there on the internet is you don't have to do anything, right? You want more of that happening because it's less effort and money on your part. Okay, so that's just a little tidbit. The things I'm going to go through, and how many of you guys were at the session a few months ago that was by Ms. Burke? I'm probably going to mangle her first name, but it was Fauzia Burke. Quite a few of you. Okay, so she's awesome, and I do have her book called Online Marketing for Busy Authors mentioned in the further reading section of my little handout that I'm going to share. She's wonderful, and she's been in this business. She caught my eye when she was talking about doing marketing for, I'm forgetting the actors, the Alan Alda. She had done marketing for him, and she had this very simple formula. But to me, it's still a bit overwhelming. You look at some of these checklists and things that you're supposed to do, and it's like, most of you don't. Wouldn't you really rather just be writing? Because, yeah, that's how I feel. Now, not everybody who writes a book is necessarily wanting to be a writer. I think most of the people in this group, you wouldn't be here if you weren't, interested in writing all the time. But there are a few folks that, they're using writing or having a book as a way to sell something, and that's kind of a different topic, which we can talk about a little bit. But if you're going to have a few things that you focus on, of course, social media. Is everybody on Facebook? Anyone? Okay. Now, Facebook, of course, can be a major time sink, but also where a lot of your readers are going to be. And it's a good way to show like what you have upcoming events and reach people that way. If you're going to choose one social media platform and not do anything else, I would say Goodreads. Anybody familiar with Goodreads? Goodreads, yay. And of course, Goodreads is now owned by Amazon. Isn't everything? That's another story. Yeah, and actually Dave has been, I'm very proud of my husband, because when he and I met, of course, I was the super technical one, him not so much. He knew more about fights and guns and so forth. In fact, he wrote his first 4 novels longhand because he didn't actually know how to type or use a computer at all. So he's come a long way. But a lot of my focus has been trying to set up things for him that are automated, that are as easy as possible for him to get his content out there and to share his knowledge. And Goodreads, you can actually share in a couple of different ways. You want to, first of all, make sure you have claimed your author page. Has everybody claimed their author page on? Okay. And by the way, if I mention something and you're not sure what that is and you want to ask me about it later, because I'm going to kind of go over a bunch of different topics, certainly, come back to it. You can always email me later and I can get into some more of that. And Lynn, I don't know if you're going to talk about some of these things too. So feel free to chime in if you want to add anything. Goodreads could be its own whole seminar, and there's actually books on that. The main thing is, first claim your author page, and then, be active on it. It's like anything with social media. You guys are great at having enthusiasm and being your authentic self, like that was it Bonnie that was mentioning how we're down to earth. This is good, because you want to be, you're sharing your true self and be that down to earth real person. That's kind of a key thing when you're doing social media and so forth. One other little key thing that Dave figured out, which I thought was pretty clever of him, is when he's posting reviews or making comments, getting involved in discussions, he will sign his review with David Putnam, author of the Bruno Johnson series. So that, I thought that was pretty clever. You have to be a little bit careful with Goodreads, because if you do too much what looks like marketing of your book, they'll knock that down, and they have some specific rules about that. Yeah, and like I mentioned, I like to do some fun stuff to get involved. Let me just tell you the story briefly of how I ended up graffitiing the side of his house, so you don't think I'm completely nuts. What happened was, when he first got this book deal, thank you, Karen, the publisher asked him, do you have any ideas for what the cover might look like? And he said, well, the book is about cops acting like gang members. And so graffiti on the side of a wall, there's usually some meaning in that. It's not just a bunch of random letters, like here where something's crossed out, that means that person was killed. The RIP is a little more obvious, but each one of these things has some meaning. So he did a little sketch, and I went out there with my ladder and some black spray paint on the side of the house that needed painting anyway, and did this, and then had a photographer friend of mine come and take some pictures. And sure enough, they liked it enough that they made that obviously part of the cover. They did later rebrand, and we'll talk about branding in a bit, and change the same book, like for the paperback, to this softer, gentler, because they figured out that most of his readers were women over 50. So that's a thing, right? Know your audience. But I'll tell you the number one thing that helped sell this book. I don't know if you guys can see up here in the top left-hand corner, the blurb from Michael Connolly. So we can talk about blurbs too. Do you have any of you guys got good blurbs from famous people?
I got a blurb from Jim Hitt. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, and actually his latest one for the book that's coming out in 20, this is advanced reader copy, and we can talk about what that is if you guys are interested. He got a quote from Janet Ivanovich, who was awesome, right? I was very excited about that, yay. Okay, but I digress here a little bit. I could go on and on about some fun stories with Janet Ivanovich. Okay, and somebody mentioned earlier, when Sandy was talking about a fight scene and thinking about your why and your how, I think this is crucial for when you're trying to figure out your marketing strategy, to remind yourself, because it is overwhelming. Why am I writing this book? Is it because I want to get more speaking gigs? Is it because I want to entertain people? Is it because I want to make a lot of money? Hopefully, hopefully that's not the main thing. But really think about your why, so that that can help you with blog posts and keeping motivated, even to remind yourself about the why. I was happy to hear about all these great titles, because of course the who's my audience, who am I, is crucial. Having a great title, right? Like a short, clear title is crucial. Even for me, as I'm writing a book, it helps me to have a title to keep focus. Because I tend to, as you've already seen, go off on little tangents all the time. Even your name. Somebody was asking about my last name, which I actually put in backwards. Dave and I are both a little bit dyslexic, so we always need editors to help straighten us out. But the first book that he wrote, which wasn't quite self-published, it was through this organization called Publish America. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I would not recommend them. But he wrote a book called Missing Fingers, and he used the name D.W. Putnam. And I actually chose D.W. Putnam for his name. There was a ton of David Putnams, and davidputnam.com was already taken, but D.W. Putnam was not. We had a whole discussion with his new publisher, this wonderful one that Karen helped us find, about using D.W. Putnam to tie in with that previous book, or to go with David Putnam. And ultimately we went with David Putnam, as you can see. And then that meant for the website, it was davidputnambooks.com, which anymore, back in the day when the internet was relatively new, that URL was a little more crucial probably than it is now. Anymore, everybody just Google stuff, right? Like you're not gonna guess at a name. You're gonna actually just put in whatever you know about the thing you're looking for. So, and we could have a whole other session on search engine optimization, but that's another topic. Any case, the main thing, like anything in writing, is to try to be consistent, right? So you have David Putnam Books, and I use that for his Instagram account is, Instagram/David Putnam Books. Same thing for Facebook. Now on Facebook, one more thing about social media before I move on to some other stuff. There's a couple different kinds of pages, right? You can have your personal page where you have to make a contact with. And have you guys had sessions on this? Is everybody pretty fluent in Facebook? Not so much. Okay. Because your personal page, which is great for, say keeping up with the grandkids, that's the main one, seeing what they're doing. You can have and that's something where you have to approve. Both people have to say, yeah, you're my friend and it's okay to connect, right? Same thing with LinkedIn, as opposed to say an author page, which is like a business page where people can follow you and it's much easier to post information about events and so forth. It's more geared toward a business. Dave is actually about at his limit for his personal account. I believe, unless they've changed it lately, 5,000 friends is where they're like, okay, you're a business or a public figure, and they cap it out at that. So I'm going to have to start working on moving some of, encouraging his friends to be sure and follow, David Putnam Books, which is the business page, which can have a phone number and your email address and things like that. So that's just a little bit on Facebook. Anybody have questions on that? That's, like I said, a whole other thing. Lynn, go ahead.
I just have a fast question about Facebook, the difference between your personal profile and your Facebook page, and that is, your business page. And that is, it seems like I'm constantly crossing over. It almost seems like, well, why wouldn't I tell everybody in my personal page about my new book, but I'm also going to put it on my other, my business page? And how much advantage is it really to keep those separate? I don't have 5,000 people. I don't have that kind of problem. So
yeah, that's a good question. And when I first started doing social media, I kind of had actually two different identities. Mary St. John was the name I was born with and had been my name since I got my first job out of school. And on LinkedIn, which I thought of as more, sort of business related and public and like your resume, I had it as Mary St. John. And then I hooked up with this guy named David Putnam. I did not take his last name, which is talk about fights. That's that's a different kind of fight that's been ongoing. But I was using Mary Putnam like at conferences and whatnot. And then I used that as sort of my writer name. So I was trying to keep these two things separate, but it was really, silly, because after a while, it's like you said, it's just sort of a big blur. And besides that, as you all, I'm sure know, you don't want to be publishing anything on the internet, even if it is your private, must approve of friends thing that you wouldn't expect anybody to be able to find anywhere, anytime, right? Got to be real careful with that. And of course, computer security is a whole other topic we could talk about. But
so
yeah.
Mary, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
It's Ellen. Hi, I have a question. So I joined a Facebook group.
Okay.
My book is Grateful for the Color Blue, Surviving the Loss of an Adult Child. And I found a group called Mothers Who Have Lost Their Sons. And I thought, and it actually has turned out to be a great place to market my book, along with, just interacting with these women. But it's clogging my personal page. And I'm kind of losing my personal page. Anyway, I don't know how to separate them. I don't know if they can. Can groups be separated from your personal page? Do you know?
It's linked to that, like you would join. And actually, one thing that I should mention before I forget is when you're on social media, I've heard different people talk about like what percentage of the time should you be touting your book, which is obviously not going to be 100% of the time, because that's not very authentic or polite. One thing you can do also is sort of mute. I've had to mute people that were always wanting me to play Farmville or whatever. Whether or not you can mute a group, I'm not sure about that. And of course, the thing about Facebook is they're changing it all the time anyway. So whatever I tell you today might be outdated, if not already, but by tomorrow. Yeah, and another thing too, there's a difference between, and I know Lynn and I talked about this a little bit with Instagram, like what you can do on your phone versus on the computer. And I will choose which device to use sometimes based on like how it shows up, because Facebook can be a mess looking at it on this tiny screen of your phone. Sometimes on a bigger screen, it's not quite so overwhelming. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but it sounds like
I'll dig around a little. I'll dig around a little bit more, but I just wanted to suggest to others that groups on Facebook are a great place to market.
For sure, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. I actually belong to a bunch of groups, certainly ones that are about your topic, like you said, like you mentioned, are great. Support groups like, I belong to a couple of writers groups that have their own private group. There's other, there's different types of groups. Like I belong to one that's about Temecula, where the area where we live, where you can ask to join, and most people are allowed to join. There's a little bit of filtering that goes on because they don't want people posting crazy stuff. Also, a couple of groups, they'll have Marketing Monday, where if you're going to be selling stuff, they'll limit it to a certain day. Like on Monday, okay, it's okay, fair game to, they encourage you to market, like here's a book giveaway or whatever it is. So check for that too, because that can be an opportunity or one of the rules that they have as part of their group. A question from, is it Bonnie?
Yeah, good catch, because I don't think my name is actually on the screen.
I'm trying to fit that in.
I have found that authors and publishers groups are awesome. There's a really good one called Savvy Indie Authors
Okay.
that is excellent for that. They do have their different days where you can do different things. Sometimes you publicize, sometimes you talk about your project, sometimes you give an inspirational something for the rest of the group. It's really nice. The other thing is the Alliance of Independent Authors. I have found to be extremely helpful, and they have a group, but you have to be a member of their program to do it. But they have a lot of really good information about all of that kind of stuff, because let's face it, as independent authors, we're chief cook and bottle washer. We have to do everything in our authoring business. But what I found is that even with my author friends who are traditionally published, traditional publishers don't do as much as they used to for their authors. So you still have to know and understand this. Facebook is a great place to do that. And somebody asked a question about how much percentage you need to have of your personal stuff. I have over years developed relationships with a lot of different types of groups of people, because my job for over 20 years was I was an internet marketer and I was a consultant for businesses. So I get what you're saying. But the thing that I found is if you're being genuine, and if it's not a constant flow of my book this, my book that, and my book something else, I actually did a poll on my own personal timeline and said, look, I know I talk a lot about my books. If you'd like me to stop, let me know. And I got like 30 different people saying, no, don't stop. We're really enjoying learning about your journey. But don't talk about where to buy it. Talk about your journey as an author, because people love to have their name connected with somebody they know who is published. Because let's face it, when you say, oh yes, I'm a published author, all of a sudden people's estimation, even if they know nothing about your books, their estimation of you goes way up, because it's a big deal what we do.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. There's also groups on Facebook by genre. So Dave and I belong to a number of mystery thriller type ones that are helpful too, and great for finding out about conferences and so forth. Lynn, comment on that.
I just wanted to ask, you said, so Goodreads would be first and Facebook would be second. If you just went on Goodreads and Facebook, would that be like enough for a beginner kind of person, or somebody who's not real vigorous to get started marketing their book? Or is there someplace else?
That's a good place to start. I mean, picking which of the social media platforms you want to do is going to be tied a lot to your audience. Of course, something like TikTok or Snapchat, that tends to be a younger crowd, and maybe not. Facebook is pretty much everybody anymore, between the kids that are sharing their pictures of the grandkids and the parents watching that. And plus, even if before all that, having a website is critical, because that's your content and that's what you have control over. And even if it's just a very simple one, like I have one right now that's in the handout that I'm going to send, called bitofmary.com. And part of why I chose that, I actually whipped it up before I did a TEDx talk a couple of years ago, because I was inspired by Karen again, who had also done one. But I was handing out these little pens, you know, because that's a great handout. And I could talk about fun handouts here in a second too. But I wanted to have a website and some contact information on my pens, because there was bananas involved in my talk about black holes, of course, because black holes and bananas are related. You never knew that, but anyway. So but I just had one little page that says, you know, under construction, here, contact me. So even if it's just the most simple web presence, you can even do, I've seen some people do this. If you have your website and your URL reserved, you know, like the davidputnambooks.com I mentioned, you can have that redirect to your Facebook business page if you want. So you can have the address, but no page yet. So that's another thing to consider. I mean, later when you get your page going, you can have it you know, redirect to the actual page where you'd want to have information about your books and bio and all that sort of thing. So I hope that helps a little bit. But for sure, Goodreads, because that's like, you know, specifically social media for people that like to read. So know your audience, right? Okay, so one of the things too that you're going to want to have ready to go, whether or not you're already published or you're just trying to find an agent or just trying to figure out who you are, is a synopsis of your book, right? Like Dave's publisher asked for a book synopsis in 50 words, which is hard, right? Like if you could have written the story in 50 words, you wouldn't have written a whole novel, you would have written a poem. I actually find that's easier to do with a buddy who can help you and lets you, you know, leave out the parts that aren't relevant. So 50, 100, and 175 words are a good thing to have your short synopsis. That's great for the elevator pitch when somebody asks you what's your book about. Also, if you're going to go to a conference and give a talk, a lot of times they'll ask you for your bio and that number of words, like to have in their printed material and so forth. Of course, a great headshot is good to have as well. Hopefully everybody has one of those on their website or not. We actually debated about whether or not we should put Dave's headshot, not because of how good looking he may or may not be, but he's a big white guy that you might have seen. His character is African American. So that could be a whole another topic of discussion, you know, whether or not, and of course it always cracks me up when people say, oh, well, you know, a man writing from a woman's point of view or a white person writing about someone who's African American, that whole write what you know, but discussion on that. But murder mysteries, okay, let's hope that nobody's ever murdered someone. Right? So anyway, of course, you always want to do your research and be respectful of different cultures and not, you know, do something stupid. But on the headshot, most people want to see that anymore, right? Especially because you want to consider that you're not just selling the book, you're selling yourself, right? You're hoping that Oprah calls. You're hoping that even if it's just the local news station that wants to do a little thing about the local author, agents are going to want to see that you're a personable human being. Authors are going to like you more. You know, like Bonnie was saying, if you have this ongoing relationship and they want to hear about you and how you wrote your books, it's not just your book, it's you're marketing yourself. So don't forget about that. I also saw, we can talk about this later, there's whole things about when you're on Zoom and doing a Zoom meeting, like how to make yourself look better. So presenting yourself. And of course, the reason I met Karen in the first place is because I joined Toastmasters way back when. We were trying to figure out how many years ago that is. I knew that I wanted to, you know, be a writer. That was my reason I met my husband, my favorite thing to do. And I knew that I was terrified of speaking in public. And Toastmasters helped a lot with that. So, you know, hone those skills where you feel like you need some help. Any questions on that? I'm on page 2, by the way, of my 4 pages here. No, okay, we're good.
No, you're doing great. We're appreciating it. Thank
You have as
you.
much time as you need. Don't worry.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, and you might have heard people talk about, especially those folks like, marketing people, the words brand and platform, right? Those make me cringe because brand, I think of, cattle, and it sounds painful. And platform makes me think of uncomfortable shoes. But that is like, if you're going to be writing a book proposal, which I have attempted a few times for like a nonfiction book, right, where you can potentially sell a book without having written the whole thing. They're going to want to know about your platform, like how many people, or let me give you an example of an amazing platform. A friend of mine is a Kaiser doctor. He recently retired as medical director for all of San Diego. And he is just super excited about all the amazing things that Henry Kaiser did and this other guy. So he wrote this book called The Courage to Heal. And he's talking about these people. And of course, the fact that he's so passionate about it helps. But now when you join Kaiser, this is like part of what you get in your goodie bag. So he's got a built-in sale, right? Doesn't even matter how well written it is. He's a pretty decent author. He especially when he's writing about the surgery scenes, because he's a surgeon and that part is amazing. But so built-in platform, super awesome. One of my very favorite authors, Mary Roach. Has anyone heard of her? She's like who I want to be when I grow up. I actually first discovered her when she was a humor writer for Reader's Digest magazine. Anybody remember Reader's Digest or still get it? Yeah. So she had this column called My Planet, which I thought was just amazing. And then Dave, he does research and he's always reading the publications like Publishers Weekly and Bookmarks and all these magazines related to books and selling of books. So he saw that Mary Roach, who he knew I was crazy about, was having her first book published called Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. So she's not a scientist, but she writes about science related things and they're really funny. So that, of course that's really up my alley. But I sent her some fan mail, which I highly recommend. This helps with getting quotes, right? So reach out to the people that you admire and you want to be when you grow up or whatever. Because she wrote me the nicest little note back. And then I've since been, my husband says stalking, but going to her various events and whatnot, even though now, like the last time I saw her was at the LA Times Book Festival, easy for me to say. Has anyone been to that, the LA Times Book Festival here? Oh, super fun. It's this whole, it used to be at UCLA and then they moved it to USC, but it's a whole weekend that's just about books and you can meet authors. In fact, one of the things I did at the LA Times Book Festival when Dave's first book was coming out, and that was the first time we actually sold them. It wasn't, the pub date wasn't, hadn't arrived yet, but we had a bunch of these copies and he got in a booth. So I had, well, actually funny story on that, quick little aside. This Michael Connelly quote, people were picking up the book and looking at, oh, I love Michael Connelly and wanting to buy the book. And somebody asked me, well, how much is it? This is how much of a salesperson I was. I went, oh, I don't know. So, I mean, they weren't actually mine to sell. We were working with a bookseller who was there at the book festival. And so I figured that out really quick. Usually it's printed on there, but sometimes, Barnes and Noble, they'll discount it or whatever. But I digress. About Mary Roach though, and let me show you a couple of fun things since I promised some fun. This is one of her newer books. And for giveaways, what she did, she's talking about, what's the tagline here? The Curious Science of Humans at War. Okay, and so for a little giveaway, she had this little tiny toilet paper, like they have if you're in the, isn't that adorable? So, and it's got the very simple, the title and her website. That's it. And it's like, wow, cool. This is and it might be handy to have in your purse, right, ladies, when you get one of those stoles that's I like the stuff that's practical too. There was another lady who does these racing mysteries, and she was giving out these little earplugs, which was great. Like when you're at a hotel in a big city, and maybe it's hard to sleep because it's so loud compared to what you're used to. So I thought that was very, very clever. So for Dave's bookmarks, a couple of things on bookmarks. What did I do with his bookmark? You'll have to forgive me, I'm a little discombobulated. We had a flood. So half of my house is in a container outside. Oh, we have lots of bookmarks. So let me show you what I did for his bookmark. I'm not seeing it right now. Hang on a second. Let me go grab one from the stash. Yeah, because we have a stash and we keep them in the purse at all times. There we go. So instead of
I want to ask her about the flood.
Oh.
No, I don't let me digress. Sorry.
Okay. So a couple things about bookmarks, which are great. I had, this has been through many incarnations, but one thing I did with bookmarks at the LA Times Book Festival that first year, Michael Connelly was there and had a huge long line of people wanting to get their books autographed by him. I'm like, okay, this is prime picking target audience, right? Fans of Michael Connelly will love David Putnam. So while they're standing there with nothing to do, they've already read the book in their hand. I handed them a bookmark. It was not just a bookmark, which now in the current iteration is actually a postcard folded in half because he's up to like 10, I can't even count. So and one of the tips that I got from somebody who is a graphic designer, when you're doing your bookmarks, they will charge you, if you go through Vistaprint or whatever printer, the standard bookmark is more expensive than half of a postcard by a lot. And it's relatively easy to take a postcard and just cut it in half. So originally when you only had one book or up to 4 books, I just put the same image on either side. And I'm not a graphic artist. Most of these websites have a pretty easy to do layout thing. So then I just cut it in half. But now I have, he's up to 8. But instead of a tassel, I attached this. I don't know if you could see, we were talking about bullets earlier. This is a little shell casing because it's about crime and stuff. So people love that. I got a lot of questions about, can I take this on the plane? It's like, well, this is just a casing. There's no gunpowder. So yes, you can take it on the plane. And then the other thing I included is a little sample chapter. So, and at the airport, when you're traveling, I was watching this guy reading a book that was a crime book. You're sitting there waiting for your flight. And he had about 3 pages left in this crime novel he was reading. So I waited until he was done. And then he was kind of looking around like, now what? I said, how'd you like that book? Oh, it was pretty good, blah, blah. Oh, hey, if you want something else to read, here you go. And I watched him take my little sample, which of course the hardest part was doing the origami and folding it up. And and he read it's the whole first chapter like you would get online, right? Free sample. But now he's got the contact information, and having, a little bit more than just a bookmark, which is easy to throw away. If you have a whole little packet like that, I think people are a little bit less likely to toss it. Now, one thing I learned, my latest version of this, it was actually when Lynn and I were, what was that, Old Town Temecula. We were doing probably one of the last few in-person events before the pandemic, and we were talking about, do people really buy, is this even worth the effort, which is a whole other topic. But these nice young people, I had this whole little packet in a plastic bag, right, a little Ziploc bag to hand out so that it would all stay together. These nice young eco-conscious young people took the sample that I handed them, but later they came back and they handed me just the plastic bag and said, we don't need this. And I'm like, wow, good for them. Hey, there's a hope for the future and the planet. So then I was feeling guilty about all this plastic I'm wasting, but I have this, crime scene, do not cross tape, which no, I did not steal that from the local police. You can order this on Amazon in a roll for pretty cheap. And I just wrapped one little thing around to hold it together. And now I use that for, I go to Barnes and Noble on a regular basis and bring them cookies. the booksellers. And when I'm giving out little gifts like that, I'll use this for a bow instead of ribbon, right? Because that's kind of fun. And anyway, so that's some fun stuff that I do. Any questions on that before I figure out where I was on my outline here? Question, Bonnie has a comment. Oh, you're not, wait, you unmute, we can't hear you.
Bonnie, unmute.
She's got bookmarks too.
Okay, so two things. I gave these out at the last science fiction fantasy con that happened before the pandemic. And what we found was people, you know how you put stuff in your convention bag and you don't think about it when people hand you free stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What we found was people would walk around the con stroking this tassel, which was really funny. It was like their own personal little book fidget spinner kind of a thing. The other thing that we added was a QR code at the bottom so that we didn't have to put a lot of information. They could go directly to my sales page to my bookstore on my website. So we found that these were really great. Matter of fact, there's a art walk. And instead of getting a booth this time, because we didn't know about it in time, we've been walking around to the art walk, just talking to people and handing these out. And it's amazing because I've actually had people stop, take their phone and order a book right in front of me after talking to me.
Oh, nice.
Using the bookmark. So
Good.
QR codes is another great way to save a lot of space on anything, and people use, especially the younger generation, they love the QR codes. So just saying.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, Bonnie, I think it's impressive that you made your QR code round, because that relates to your loops of your book, and it also it differentiates. People are gonna, it's kind of eye-catching because they're used to the square one.
I have a round one, and I have a square one with a cat in the center of it. This was kind of the first iteration, but you can do QR codes in a number of different shapes and sizes. And there are lots of websites where you can just go and make a free QR code, and they even track how many times it gets used and all that kind of cool stuff. I'll put some links up in the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for sure, tracking and analytics, that's something that we haven't quite touched on, but once you get set up and you're trying to decide what's working and what's not, that's a great way. Or even just on your website to see, well, where, on that inbound stuff, if all of a sudden you see a spike in your website views, which is nice to kind of keep track of, having that information about where are people coming from. Was it because I handed out, whatever it was, toilet paper? Yeah, you'll put this one. So she has, that's only half a dozen or so characters. So the title of the book, not even the full title, and the website, if that's all you're going to have on there, that's great. QR codes are actually something that was big in Japan back in the day. People didn't know, or they would have them in the windows of stores and whatnot. These days, I don't know if you guys have been to a restaurant since the pandemic, but people have been using QR codes in restaurants for the menu. So instead of them handing you a menu, you have to pull out your phone and scan the QR code and pull it up. So that's definitely not so exotic, especially for the 50+ generation, as it had been, a year and a half ago before the pandemic. So yeah, and for sure, generating that QR code and putting it on a bookmark, not as hard as it used to be, or you won't get as many people going, what's this thing? What is QR code? So good point. Thanks for
Mary.
Question, Daniel?
Mary, yeah. Do you see my question in the chat?
Oh, sorry. Let me pull the chat over here and see. Could you tell us about your books?
Why don't you just go ahead and ask your question instead of putting it in the chat?
Because she's reading it now.
Daniel.
Stop micromanaging me.
Oh, you guys are cute. It's like an old married couple. So I had one book myself that I'm not going to talk about. I have moved on from that. I killed more people than my husband did in his crime novel. But I will thank you for that opportunity. So, when my husband and I met in that novel writing workshop in the late 1900s. He was writing, crime novels, and I was writing more what you might call romantic comedy, rom-com kind of stuff, a novel. But I since figured out that I tended to be better at nonfiction. So I had a probably the most widely read thing that I've ever written was a op-ed in Newsweek called My Turn. And actually that I have Toastmasters to thank for too, because when I first started going to Toastmasters, I was so intimidated. These people came, and I was only 20 nothing, right? So there are these people like Karen that have had these fascinating lives and they have all kinds of stuff to talk about. And Toastmasters will give you things to focus on, like vocal variety and hand motions and all this stuff, but they don't actually give you a topic. You have to come up with that yourself. And I thought, well, what do I have to say? I don't know anything. But I was a new stepmom, and I had some thoughts about stepmotherhood. Family, super important to me, to most of us, I would imagine. So I had an opinion on how one should be a stepmother. And I thought, well, I'll talk about that for my Toastmasters talk. And I sat down and I wrote this thing that was actually sort of linear and didn't have too many asides, which clearly I struggle with. But when I was done, it was too long for the Toastmasters, 5-minute talk like they have you do when you first get started. But it was just about the right amount of words for this column that I'd been reading in Newsweek since forever called My Turn. And sure enough, that 900-word piece, they paid me $1,000 for it. So more than $1 a word, which is like unheard of. And this photographer came to take my picture. He was about to go shoot Demi Moore after me. I thought we might be on the same roll of film. And anyway, that was pretty cool. So I've done better with smaller nonfiction things, including the little TED Talk that I mentioned, which they keep you to under 20 minutes. Is more like 12 minutes or 3 minutes now. So I can't get too off topic. My husband, though, who earlier Lynn was talking about 2 books a year, he's been doing 2 books a year for the last more than 10 years, which is just disgusting, right? And depressing for the housemate who ekes out a few hundred words here and there. So his books, in fact, he mentioned the other day that he's going to have over 1 million words in print coming up here pretty soon, which was kind of, because he's got more than 10 books and each one is about 100,000 words. So I was going, wow. So sales successes, that's one of those things like politics, right? Like you're not supposed to talk about politics or religion or how much money are you actually making or not making. For sure, the spikes we've seen, having Michael Connolly blurb his book was huge. What else? I don't know. That was a long ramble about your short question. Did I cover what you were looking for, Daniel?
Yeah, you did. Thanks.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know that you're analytical and you look at, what works and what doesn't, with your background, I know that that's something that you bring to this meeting. And so I would like to ask you if you have any data or if you have any understanding of whether it's better to put all the work into a newsletter or to blog. Because it's my impression that most authors are not blogging right now. They prefer to have a newsletter because then you own your audience. But at the same time, it's kind of like having the difference between a Facebook personal profile and a Facebook fan page. There's a lot of blurring, and I just wonder if there's a point. I know that my blog does automatically post on my Amazon author page, which is a nice benefit, I guess. I don't know if it does anything, but it's nice that it shows up there. And it also shows up on Goodreads. But my independent MailChimp newsletter subscriber list of 380 people, it's a lot of work. And what good is that really? I know you can sell books when you send out your notice to people, you send out, you cultivate the community, etc. But I don't see how that's any better than having a blog. I think blogs seem easier. Any data or information on that, Mary? Thanks.
Yeah, let me tell you what I know a little about that. And to go back to the first things that I mentioned about it's supposed to be fun and you can't do it all and pick what's easiest. Let me tell you, and of course I have this not technical husband who and I have to say he's been doing a great job on Goodreads, right? Which is, like I said, if you're going to pick one, Goodreads has a pretty easy way to post what they call a blog. And he's been doing that sometimes. Like he'll have a little thought, or maybe there's been a discussion on In Cold Blood, and he once shared, I think this was in a blog on Goodreads, to be clear, about how one of the first movies that he ever saw when he was way too young, he had this crazy aunt that took him and his cousin and dropped them off at the movie theater. You know, they weren't even supposed to be there because it was rated R, because it was In Cold Blood. So he tells this little story. Now, what you're supposed to do, according to the marketing experts and whatnot, is have control of your own content, right? And do that inbound marketing thing. So in a perfect world, he would have posted that blog on his own website and then linked to it from Goodreads. You know, maybe have a little tweet go out about here's how I saw In Cold Blood at age 8 or whatever it was, a little teaser thing, and have that inbound stuff coming in to pull people to your website, so that when they're there, they go, oh, this guy's crazy. What's he, or whatever, and check out your books and so forth. There's also a way, like I use WordPress for his website. That's a pretty common one. Maybe not the simplest, but it's been around for a long time. It was originally for blogs, right? So it's set up where like the blogs show up on the main page by default and so forth. But it's also very easy to make a simple website with various pages and so forth. But one thing you can do on that is send an email to a specific address with WordPress, and it'll automatically post that as a blog. So you don't even have to log in or anything. You just have to set this up, which is great. I thought, well, perfect, because my husband can do email. In fact, one of the things I taught him early on when he was worried about backing up stuff and I couldn't get him to use the cloud, I said, well, just email that file to yourself. If you're going to do nothing more to back up your novel, email it to yourself. If your hard drive crashes, gets stolen or whatever, you still have it there backed up on multiple servers, but I digress. About the email thing though, having an email list, everybody agrees, all the marketing books I've heard and experts, including that gal whose name I'm blanking on, that each email address is like gold. So you're 300 or whatever, and you want to own that. You want to make sure you can access that. I actually keep Dave's list in a separate Excel spreadsheet thing. And one thing that we do, which I have here on my list, but I haven't talked about yet, on Goodreads, it used to be free to do a book giveaway. Is anybody, you guys familiar with book giveaways on Goodreads? Okay, now you can do your own giveaway like we talked about on Facebook. If you want to do a thing on a group or whatever, say, hey, do this, that, and the other. You can have people jump through however many hoops or not, just do a drawing and give away books. The giveaway on Goodreads used to be free. Now you have to pay something like $600 just for them to post it. Okay, so Dave has done this several times. His publisher will do it for him as well. They tend to do in advance of the book coming out, trying to generate those pre-publication reviews. They will do an ebook giveaway. So of course that doesn't cost them anything. Dave tends to be more, let's call it old school as opposed to old fashioned, because that sounds cooler. But he likes to have a physical book. So here's what we did. His new book that's coming out, what is it, next year, 2022 already, holy smoke. We got these advanced reader copies. And are you guys familiar with ARC's advanced reader copies? Should I talk about what that is? The idea is it's for generating reviews, right? Okay, so if you do a book giveaway before the book comes out, and target those reviewers like on Goodreads, they'll charge you $600, but it shows up on their website and people are looking for this. He's decided that this is a good way to spend money, and he's cultivated his contacts both on Goodreads, that's where he makes his friends and so forth. But then the thing that happens on a physical book, is at the end of the giveaway, like we did this last one, 100 books we were giving away. And you guys all know about media mail, right? Now, the post office, which was like the one place that I went to during the pandemic, outside the house, you can do all your, other mail without leaving the house because they'll come and pick up your priority mail for free. They'll even send you envelopes. But to get the book rate, which is like $3 and something, as opposed to $8, you have to actually go to the post office. That's a whole other conversation. In any case, but Goodreads would send us this list of 100 addresses, like snail mail addresses, but we don't have the people's email address. We have a link to their profile on Goodreads. And if you set up a little conversation, because you can go back and forth just like in Facebook and have a chat and maybe solicit someone's email. But what I did with all these 100 addresses that I got is I sent out postcards to those people saying, the next year, hey, if you're interested, send me an email and I'll, put your name in a drawing or send you a free book, whatever. So now I have both their snail mail address and their email address. So that's $600, which seems high. People talk about how much you're going to pay for a click or how much you're going to pay for an email address and all that. He's been getting a crazy number of reviews on Goodreads, which that's definitely made his sales go up in the last year since he was focusing on that instead of, we had been in 2019, we went to something like 20 different Barnes and Nobles across Southern California. And here where we are in Temecula, it's conveniently close to a ridiculous number of Barnes and Nobles, which is great. Breaking into Barnes and Noble is another conversation, but did I answer your question there? That was a long answer, Lynn, to a short question. Yeah, okay, good. What else? Did I cover everything I had? The last couple of topics I had on here were about networking. We talked about joint. Oh, Karen has a, she's waving her arms. Wait, you're mute. I can't hear you.
Hold on.
Got it.
I know that you just finished mentioning all the times that you went to book signings and things at Barnes and Nobles, and I went to 2 or 3 of them and a couple of bars and this and that. But anyway, did you find that that was a good idea or was it more expense than it was worth?
So yeah, we did. We've tried a bunch of different venues. There's this one place down the hill that used to be called Wine on a Dime, and they didn't charge us anything to use their venue. We partnered with them and did something called Wine and Crime at the Dime. But essentially, and we had some wine and we had some books for sale. We were selling them ourselves in that case. So I had a little square, so I could take credit cards. That's hard to do. And I'm sure Lynn could attest to this. If you're trying to talk up your book to people walking by a table or in a bar or whatever, and trying to take orders. In fact, when Dave spoke at your guys' group, you guys were so awesome and everybody bought books, it seemed like. That was the most overwhelmed I got as a bookseller myself, because everybody was so generous and lining up to buy his books. So I had, make sure you got your change and your little card reader. Barnes & Noble is great if you can get in. Getting in is a whole other thing. Once you get into one, it's easier to convince the others to have you, because they're all about the sales, right? How many books did you sell? So when Dave sold over 50 books in one afternoon at the Barnes & Noble in Temecula, we made sure to tell all the other Barnes & Nobles. And actually nowadays, Barnes & Noble, I don't know if you guys know about this, they recently had a change in leadership. They have this new CEO who is all about giving the stores more autonomy themselves. So that's good news. Just recently, we went to a couple of Barnes & Nobles. We were on our way up to a writers' meeting, and we were pleasantly surprised by the reception we got in a couple of places. First of all, they're going to start opening it up and doing author events again. And it was clear that the managers had more, say in it. They were grateful. Like the one guy, wanted to buy us coffees, you know. And they've done that too, you know, how they have a little like Starbucks kind of place in the corner. So while we're sitting there, they'll bring us lattes or whatever. It's kind of nice. So that I felt like that was worth it. It's fun. I mean, that sitting in a Barnes and Noble and trying to hand sell, it can be depressing because you sit there. Dave's got a great line. He'll just ask people coming in the front door, do you like mysteries? That's a simple question, right? And that's very specific to his genre. Are you a mystery fan? And if they're not, then his book is not for them. He also sells other people's books. So folks that are interested in writing, or he likes to read a lot of sci-fi. So he might recommend somebody else's book on sci-fi. He's recommended Stephen King's On Writing a ton of times to people that are like thinking about writing a book. So I think Barnes and Noble should give him a commission for the other books he sells besides that. We were thrilled one time when he was up to 4 or 5 books. You know, when they first come out, they come out in hardcover. So they're $26 for a hardcover. And this one lady, more than once, we had somebody buy all 5 of them. So we're over $100 for an author they had never heard of until they walked in. And of course, Lynn knows this. As you get into the higher numbers of books that you have, then all that work you have, pays off a little bit because you didn't just sell one book. Now you're multiplying, right? So keep writing, y'all. Keep writing, get it out there. That's about all I had. I have some links and whatnot. Oh, here's a nerd thing I want to mention. For those of you that do have a website and you're putting links on your website, there's something called, and this is a nerd thing. I could talk about the nerd stuff for hours, but there's something called a clean link. If you just do a search for your book and you get the little URL at the top, it'll say Amazon.com or whatever / the name of the book, and there's a bunch of gobbledygook. I don't know if you can see it here, and I can send this out, but you want to make sure to cut that extra stuff off the end, especially if you're sending, you're begging your friends and whatever to give you reviews on your book. It's hard enough to get reviews, but Amazon will take them down sometimes if they think that this is a friend of yours. And part of it, they don't tell you the algorithm, but part of it is based on that gobbledygook that they embed in the URL. If they see that a bunch of these reviews came from the same source, they're going to think, oh, that's, some Chinese scam thing, and we're not going to approve this. So question, Lynn.
So I just always have wondered about this. If you eliminate everything in the URL, starting with the question mark and going to the right, is that what does it?
Yes, that's right. Is it the question mark? It's actually before that.
It could be a question mark or an ampersand.
Yeah, and I can send out a link. What you want to do is test it.
Yeah, copy and paste it somewhere.
Yeah, like into your browser in incognito mode or whatever, so it doesn't know who you are. But yeah, that's a little nerd trick that you want to be careful with, especially when you're trying to do all that work to get reviews, which is so important and so easy to get knocked down. Another thing too that sometimes people forget is they'll put links to buy my book on Amazon. But if you're trying to hit the independent booksellers like we do, they don't like it when you're saying buy my book on Amazon. Make sure you put links to their website before Amazon, right? Because they're going to check out your website. You want them to link from their bookstore website to your website. So you want to, be kind to your local independent booksellers that are still a few out there. So that's my plug for bookstores. Anything else? Question, comment, Bonnie?
I have gone wide with my books. In other words, I basically relinquished my exclusive contract with Amazon. My books are still selling on Amazon, but I'm distributing through Ingram Spark and Draft to Digital. Draft to Digital does my ebooks and Ingram Spark does my physical books. So one of the things about reviews is, oh my goodness, I mean, you've got Goodreads and that's great, and you've got Amazon, but I wanted to be able to own my own reviews. So I put up a page on my website that says our readers say, and at the bottom is a form they can fill out to put in a review for my books. And I recently rebuilt my website from scratch because it crashed and the backup died. So I had to rebuild it. So there aren't as many reviews on there as there were previous to this. But the point is I'm finding what's really nice about that is that anybody, whether they bought their books from Amazon or not, can put those reviews up there. And then I go ahead and contact them individually and say, hey, this is a great review. Could you also put it up on Goodreads?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's easy to do too, like on WordPress, which is what I use for Dave's website. When people will comment, and you could choose whether or not you want them to be able to comment directly or if it has to be approved, you know, to avoid like spam. We don't have to worry about that too much, but for sure, yeah, when you do have people say how much they loved your book, always remember to ask them, thanks for the kind words, please, you know. And in fact, the little thank you note that Dave gives out, because and one of the tricks too that I found as far as printing all this stuff, because I don't know if you can see, there's like a sign back here that we bring sometimes to bookstores, or he likes these hanging on the wall. There's all kinds of stuff. You can spend tons of money on, you know, little doodads that have your information on it. But when he gives away a book and he writes a little thank you note, he makes sure to tell people to, you know, remember about the reviews, because that's absolutely critical. Yeah, here's one. He said, reviews are appreciated. And they also seem to like the little handwritten note too, which takes some time. I do have the bookmarks professionally printed at a real printer. You can see it's kind of glossy. But for some of the simpler things, like a little thank you note, I printed this on a inkjet, which does better color than my color laser printer. But yeah, to try to, you know, mitigate the cost of some of the things that we send out. Anybody else? Questions? We still have some time. Don't be shy. I can talk nerdy all night.
I have a suggestion though. It strikes me a lot of people don't know about this website called about.me. Have you used that, Mary? Are you familiar with it? It's like if you don't want to have a whole website, but you want to have an online presence that points people to your books and stuff like that, go to about.me and create a profile. It's free. And so basically it's like having a business card in the sky. And you can have like your Facebook link and your Goodreads link and your anything else, your email and all kinds of stuff on that one page, you know, website basically. And it's free. So just check it out, about.me.
Another one that's free, but probably a little bit harder to navigate is Wikipedia. Because if you're a public figure, and this goes to search engine, or even if you ask Alexa, you know, who is so-and-so, if you have a Wikipedia page, you know, like all the celebrities and whatnot. And this is one of those do as I say, not as I've done, because I started a Wikipedia page for Dave and then it kicked it back because I had something not quite right and I never got around to putting it on there, but I should have. He's commenting, say hi, honey. Hi, honey. Anyway. So yeah, that's another one that I need to add back to my to-do list is Wikipedia.
That's a wild.
Anybody else? Any other suggestions, comments, questions? Karen, do you have your hand? Oh, there he is, the man himself.
Yeah, hi, Dave.
Hey, David.
So you should clarify, Mary, you were saying you could talk nerdy with an N, right? Nerdy all night.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I like the puns and the corny jokes. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Anyone else?
Any more questions for Mary?
No, but you know, I have to say I was really happy to have you remind us of Dave's visit to the Guild when we got to meet in real life. And I do remember seeing everybody swarming, not just Dave's table, but typically when we have a visiting author, our members are real curious and generous with, you know, their purchases and stuff. And it just reminded me of the good old days. And I do keep checking with the library, everyone, to find out, you know, when are we going to be able to go back there? So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon.
Well, and I was happy to hear, I think Michelle mentioned that when we do go back to the library, that trying to keep a web presence for folks like, I think Bonnie said she was in Washington. Is that, I mean, I've been to events that are both virtual and in person, which is tricky, and I'd be happy to help, but that sounds great.
Well, to speak to that, we've had quite a phenomenon during COVID, kind of an unexpected benefit, is that we suddenly now have literally paid members all over the country. Bonnie's just one of the most recent, but we have back east, we have Arizona, we have Nevada, and because we've been on Zoom and people want to support us, which is fabulous. So now we have an obligation to these members. And so before the pandemic, the Guild had purchased a laptop with all the accoutrements because the laptop at the library was very unreliable for PowerPoints, et cetera. And so now all we need to make it happen, honestly, is just a nice camera. So we should be able to do that. We're going to work out the logistics, but that's the goal, I think, as the board has discussed. So we haven't voted on it or anything yet, but I think overall everyone's open to trying to maintain that, because I do feel at this point we do have an obligation to our non-local members. And I'm so thankful for everybody because it's helped keeping us afloat as a guild through the pandemic as a nonprofit. So.
Yeah, Michelle, that worked in our in the HIT critique group too. We had that Zoom. We were only doing it by Zoom, as you know, and then he decided to open his house again, and but he kept the Zoom part going for those of us who'd rather not take the schlep out to Hemet, or as the French say, Hemet.
I have an observation. Can I ask a question, Mary?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to know, what is the fastest way to build your platform if you're trying to do that?
The fastest way to build your platform, I would start with, who are you trying to reach? Like I mentioned, you can, and platform, okay, there's web presence and there's platform. I'm assuming that you meant more of web presence?
For example, I'm trying to get as many Facebook followers as possible. My agent is sending out my books to be considered by publishers. I want them to know that I've got a following and I'm new on that. Yes, hold on. Okay, I have.
Whoops, never mind.
I know that there are ways to pay for such things. I don't know if I would recommend that for followers because they're not going to be, real genuine. And you don't want to blow too much smoke for the publisher, whatnot. Maybe I should pause before he comes back.
I think he's really vigorous in doing a lot of things. He has a blog that he's just blogging like crazy, and he's on Facebook. I can give you the background while he's away, and then when he comes back, we can pick up. But he's also said that he has run some ads, minimal ads, but they're having good effect to get people to sign up for his Facebook business page. He has a website. He's just seemingly very vigorous about doing everything right, but maybe he's wondering if any one of those things would be more where you would put your focus. If you only had, 24 hours in the day, where would you spend most of your energy on building up your website or building up your Facebook, or Dennis?
Well, and to speak to that, the reason is because he is about ready to launch. He has multiple children's picture books in progress with an agent who is gearing up to send out to 15 editors. So it is serious for him to have a substantial platform before he even publishes. Now he's published in other things, short stories here and there and different things, and as contributors to different things, but not as a children's author. So he's trying to really create a platform for himself. That's kind of his background.
This is recorded, so you could actually give your answer and then he could see it. If he never comes back, we might be waiting a while.
His wife has medical issues, and my guess is he had to hurry up and do that. So yeah, if you could, and then he can watch it later.
Yeah, okay, so some thoughts off the top of my head. I mean,
hey.
Like I mentioned, my friend who was the medical director, and he had a built-in platform with Kaiser. Now, since it's a children's book, I'm guessing that the best case scenario is that this is going to be, required reading in schools and whatnot. Dave actually had, how did we meet her? There was a teacher who asked him to come and speak at a local school, which he did. He did back to back, like 7 different assemblies. That was a very long day. But what happened was these kids that were in attendance, you know, and it was this assembly of a couple hundred kids each batch. So he spoke to probably over 1,000 kids in that one day. And then they went home and talked to their parents. And here's a weird little story, is one of those kids told mom about the guy that came and spoke in assembly. And she had been the woman that Dave had hired to type his first manuscript when he didn't know how to type. So that he hadn't heard from for decades, right? So reached back. So teachers, one thing I didn't mention, which is, this is a little bit of an aside, not so much toward platform, but as you're building that content that you want people to get engaged in your website, my friend Judy, who her book is more, I think it should be required reading for junior high and high school, but she did this discussion questions. So teachers, for sure, if they're going to teach your book, and you can do as much work for them as possible, that's awesome. Of course, having for picture books, the art is going to be something that's like eye-catching. If you know any teachers or librarian, another website that I list that's been very helpful. The book, let's see, WorldCat. Libraries are tricky because they're all different systems. Like here in Temecula, we have a City of Temecula library and a Riverside Temecula library, different systems. But if you go to, what is it called? I think I have it in here somewhere. WorldCat.org is a website where you can look at what, you know, where your book is in the library, or if your book is not there yet, but you look up a similar one, like some book that says, like if you could get a blurb, or if you're going to be compared to some book, you look for where that is, right? Across the country, you can search by distance from where you are. And then you can reach out, you know, I would start with a generic thing saying, hey, my book's coming out. I would love to come and talk, or whatever it is that you're going to offer to these librarians, and link to your website, because they have contact information for libraries all over the world. That's not too much effort to get more people going to visit your website. What else? Do you know a lot of teachers? Oh, wait, you're muted.
Unmute, Dennis.
I do know that there are some teachers locally. I do know that there's a new library nearby. I'm going to go over and visit with them. Then I might be able to get into other libraries in the Riverside system. I'm also thinking, I'm building my Facebook page at about 100 a week in terms of contacts coming in from advertising, about $10 a day. Do you have any other suggestions about outreach that, I mean, obviously you mentioned Goodreads and some other good contact information here that I'll go ahead and explore. And I'm going to be on Pinterest. I'm just started on Pinterest, working with a social media person who's helping me. Any other suggestions? Or you seem to have given me a lot, so I'm pretty well set here in terms of outreach and going to go ahead more in-person stuff.
Yeah, and when you're going to decide how to spend your money, one thing to look at, I'm trying to remember, I think it was on Goodreads. You could do advertising, but they didn't charge you. Like you could put a maximum, right? You could say, this is my budget. I want to spend $50. So it's easy to try different things, especially when they give you a limit like that. So if you say, okay, I want to spend, you know, whatever, $20 on Goodreads and see if anything happens. The other thing I did with my friend who's the discussion questions I mentioned, well, for one thing, her book was called Disturbed in Their Nests. So rather than just a bookmark, a plain bookmark like we were talking about, I did one of those, what they call a door handle, you know, that you hang on the door, like you'll see pizza advertisements or whatever. I said, you know, do not disturb. I'm reading Disturbed in Their Nest. So I did that. But also, oh shoot, I just derailed my own train of thought here. Oh, for advertising on Goodreads, You can do what they call A/B testing, where you try different taglines, right? So we put, you know, just trying out a couple of different keywords and so forth that might appeal to your readers, and then mix it up. So if you go for a week and nobody clicked on it, okay, try something else. But Goodreads, as far as just advertising, you know, the book giveaway is a whole other thing that most people aren't going to want to do. But just a little advertising, you can try stuff for relatively cheap. I know Facebook sounds like you're already doing that. Yeah, Pinterest, because you have visual things, you know, it's like you want to grab people by the images in your book. If it's a picture book, that's a good choice for you know, for what am I trying to say, social media platform, because it's visual. And you can probably on that, you know, try something for relatively cheap and see how it goes. I've actually seen, this is a little bit weird, but I have a ridiculous addiction to this game on my phone. It's a great way to procrastinate writing. It's a Scrabble game, and I noticed that the ads that come up on there, which I have clicked on, it looks like they're actually going to a Facebook ad. I'm not quite sure how that works, advertising in games, but I would think for a younger audience like that, I don't know if there's games, you know, because a lot of times what they'll do is the app is free, and the way that the app providers make money is by having this advertising. So if your book has birds in there and there's an Angry Birds game or whatever, I'm just
so we are getting really close to our 11:30 end of meeting.
Yep.
There's nothing that says we have to cut off at 11:30, but I wanted, if there was anyone that does have to go and just really has some last pressing question for Mary, this would be the time. Anyone have anything?
I'm going to put my email in the chat just in case anyone thinks of something later.
Yeah, please do. Please do. And so if there aren't any other questions, then I'd like to close with, boy, has this been an info dump, mega ton worth. And my head's reeling. And I know that Jerry here has been taking copious notes the whole time. So
I think we're going to comment.
Are we going to say something about our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
Thank you, Lynn. No, I appreciate the reminder, because I could forget. You never know.
I'm a micromanager too.
We all, you know what, we gotta be. But I've got my list that Jim gave me, what I needed to do, and it's the last item. So with that, Howard's still here. Good. Howard, would you please tell us what we have in store for our August meeting?
Yes, we have the 6th annual Diamond Valley Writers Guild Poetry event. And one of the great things about it is that southwestern Riverside County is one of the hotbeds of poetry in the nation. We have such great writers, such great poets, and this event is always one that I look forward to because I lead it. But we have people who write such great poetry, and the way the event works is, let me know if you want to read your poems. You're limited to 2 poems, except the regular length, whatever they are. We have a couple of people who read haiku, and the people who write haiku, since it's only 3 lines, I've decided this year to extend the number of haiku to 10. So that's only 30 lines. So, but we do have the haiku exception. And then what we generally do is you introduce your poem by explaining a little bit about what motivated you to write it and what it means to you. And people can hear your poetry and react to it. And my experience has been that people love the poems, whether they're heavy duty poems or lighthearted poems or whatever they are. They're filled with great description, emotion, feeling, and they're worth hearing. So poetry is not well heralded. My job in life is to make them more heralded. So what I usually do is in the beginning, take 10, 15 minutes to go over some form of poetry that we never have exposure to. I think last year or the year before, I did Sanskrit poetry, and I loved it. and we had a great reaction. Who's heard Sanskrit? So it's I encourage you to attend, and if you have a poem you'd like to read, or 2 poems, or if you're going to write a poem this next month, bring it along. Everybody's welcome. There are no rules. I always like to say poetry is perfect, so there's no judgment involved. If E. Cummings can omit punctuation and grammar, so can you. So, I look forward to seeing you all on the 28th of August.
And what we'll be doing is we'll be sending out information through the Diamond Valley Guild email as to how to submit to Howard. So you don't have to worry about that. It'll be forthcoming. So if you're on our mailing list, which I'm assuming everyone here probably is, you're fine. If you're not, then email dvwritersguild@gmail.com and we'll add you. Also, if you know anybody who should be in these meetings that isn't, have them reach out to us. We'd love to have more participation. We always get good participation, but we always have room for another writer. With that, if there isn't anything else, we'll adjourn the meeting. I'm not going to close this link immediately in case you guys want to chat or connect, because I think sometimes we too abruptly end it. I don't see a reason to. So
I want to say one last thing.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I got us off track before we had a chance to say thanks to Mary. So
I know. Yeah, I caught that too. But
appreciate
everybody
that.
was putting it in the chat and she was responding.
Yeah.
And yes, Mary, thank you. It was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
Very motivating.
Any last words officially? Otherwise, we'll adjourn the meeting. Okay, well, we're
Good
adjourned.
job, Michelle.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm not going to close the link yet if you guys wanted to chat. Just going to turn off.
Jerry, are you there? Jerry Green?
Yeah.
It's
Who's
Ellen
this?
Wolf. So,
Oh, hi, Ellen.
Hi. I sent you an email and asked if you'd like to write my 10 favorite books for this edition of Straight Jackets magazine, and I didn't hear back. So I wondered if you got my email.
No, she just ignored you because she doesn't like you very much. That's what it is.
I guess I didn't. You want to send that again?
What's your email? What's your email?
Jerry, JERIGREENE, the number 1 at Gmail.
At Gmail. Okay. I'll see.
And I saw you at the San Diego Writers Festival. I saw you. I was, a voyeur.
Yeah, great.
It was good. I liked it.
Good. Yeah, that was wonderful. Anyway, I'll contact you by email and ask again. Or maybe you could answer right now. Are you interested in writing my 10 favorite books for the next edition?
That's a good idea. Put her on the spot.
Oh yeah, put me on the spot. My 10 favorite books. I don't know.
How to Bury a Bachelor is number 1.
Yeah, can I list my own?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would need it within, say, a week, 5 to 7 days, if possible.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll send you some information.
You may be surprised.
I hope so. We've had some very interesting books from other authors. Great, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't respond before.
What is that? What are you doing,
Is
Karen?
Lynn still on? Oh, I'm sorry. Is Lynn still on? I'm on my
No.
phone. This is Sharon. Oh, she's
Lynn
gone.
left.
Okay. Okay. How do I, I'm a newer member. How do I access the playback of the recording?
Okay, so in a undisclosed period of time, Jim will put it up on the website and there'll be emails sent out with links to YouTube for you to be able to access it. Usually it takes him 2 to 3 weeks. Once we end this today, then I'll be sending it to him, and then he's on vacation. So it's maybe even a little longer, but once it is, then everybody who's in the email contact list will get a link to view it.
All right. This was a great, another great session. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you were here. Thank you.
Welcome to the gang.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'd like to say that as far as the 10 best books, I have a friend who reads everything that's listed. So I started that with Lynn, when Lynn did the her 10 favorite books. He started reading everything. He
Wow.
read everything she listed, and he goes through it. He looks forward to that. So it's kind of an important thing for him. It's great. So
Great.
I just
No
wanted
pressure.
to say thank you, whoever it was. I don't remember now who invited me to this group, but whoever it was, this has been valuable for me, and I'm really looking forward to future meetings.
Oh, good. It was Kathy Keynes from the library. She, Hemet Public Library, she
Okay.
CC'd me and responded to your request to potentially speak at the library
Right,
and
which
CC'd
I
me
had
and
such a
said, contact
good
them.
time doing that. That was so much
Yeah.
fun.
So cool.
Just one other thing. I would really, I'm looking forward to your book festival thing. And I don't know if I can attend virtually, but if nothing else, maybe I'll make a trip down to SoCal. I haven't been to Hemet in years, so.
Well, I think the book festival they were talking about was the LA Book Festival.
Oh,
It's held
okay.
every
I
year in
thought
Los
you said
Angeles.
that you
San
did a
Diego.
thing in your group when you met in person. So maybe I misunderstood that.
No, but we have meetings like this in person, and then you know, whoever's speaking, they can always bring their books and to sell. And that's what Mary was talking about, is that when her husband spoke, he brought his books and
Got it.
sold
Got
a
it.
lot of them at that.
Well, I'd
We
love to
always,
do that.
whenever we
too.
have author speakers, we always invite them to bring
Cool.
inventory to sell at our meetings. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Mhm. Gosh, it's good seeing everybody. Some of you I see on a more regular basis than others.
So
But,
there is another free Writers Festival, which I think Jerry was referring to. It's the San Diego Writers Festival. They've already had day 1. Day 2 is on July 31st. It streams live on Facebook and it's free. And I think they had some great speakers, didn't you, Jerry?
Yes, I really enjoyed it. Did you pitch anybody, Alan?
No, I didn't.
I didn't.
Did you? Did you?
No, no.
I think that was the one last year. It was in Coronado, but they went virtual. And one of the agents that I saw speaking there, who was a San Diego agent, was amazing. And it's always nice if you're going to pitch. I don't know if you guys are looking for agents or whatever, but of course, when you do a query letter, which could be a whole other, session, to quote them back. I really enjoyed what you said about such and such at the, if you open with that, it's always great. So yeah, I have a book that I'm still waiting to pitch to somebody then based on something that she said during that festival.
I'm about to jump back into that again. I put all that on hold during the pandemic because there were so many strange things happening in New York and in the publishing industry. And I just felt like it was not the time to start blowing through my prospective agent list. I do have, it's been a long time. My book is with Tor, with Jen Gunnels at Tor, but she's so busy that when she's emailed me, she said, she asked for the full manuscript from the San Diego Writers Conference back in 2019. And I got it to her, but by the time I got it to her, she had so many deadlines happening and Brandon Sanderson's book was coming out, all this stuff was happening. And she never got a chance to read it. And she said, I am paid to read agented only. She said, I can't get to this. I'm so sorry. You get an agent, tell them to reach out to me, and then I can read it. And she had asked for the manuscript. And so it's still sitting there and we communicate, through social media, but I just need an agent to get it where she can officially read it because she's obligated to read agented first, period. And she was so overwhelmed, she couldn't get to an unagented manuscript.
Well, that's what you open your agent query with because you already got a hook. That's perfect.
And I have, and I still can't seem to get past it. I even had some that Jonathan Mayberry, I put right in there. Jonathan Mayberry recommended I contact you. You would think that would help. And they don't even ask for pages. But that's why I stopped. The pandemic had hit and things were just weird. They were just looking, there were a lot of agents, unfortunately, and this was kind of a sad thing because I think writers as a community that, art and you were talking earlier, addressing the own voice, same voice sort of issues that were coming up with your husband's main protagonist, being a man of color, is that some agents were flat out putting on Twitter, unless you are a particular ethnicity, don't even send me your manuscript. And that's a sad thing. I think that, everybody should be looked at. So I just stopped and I'm going to eventually get back to it here. I think 2021 is the year to go ahead and do that again. So if you have any suggestions on that, I'd love it, because I just need an agent so that I can reach back out, email Jen and say, okay, I've got one, she'll be contacting you. And because I just need something like that. So if you have any ideas, I write science fiction and fantasy.
It's
Actually,
fantastic. It's Michelle has a lot to offer in that book.
Oh, yeah. So actually, I'm hoping that the tides are kind of turning on what you were talking about.
Yeah.
There was I don't know if any of you guys subscribe to Publishers Weekly. It's very expensive and might be something to look at in the library. Dave's been getting it for a long time. They have on their last page like a little soapbox sort of thing, like the My Turn, where people can put in a 1,000-word opinion on something. And the last person that, at least the one that I read, I think it was the current. I could probably find it and send it to you. But she was what did she self-identify as? Like LGBTQ, which was one of the sought after. But she was kind of making the point that they shouldn't just be buying books based on that. What about quality? So I was going, amen. Thank you, hoping that lots of people in the publishing industry read that, and that the tides are turning. Gosh, for suggestions.
I mean, a book is either good or it isn't. It's either merit-based or it's not, and that's really the only criteria that should matter.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
Yeah.
But,
as far as agents that would be, well, maybe we can talk about this.
Yeah, if you think of somebody, always looking for recommendations and ideas. And I'm going to start cold querying again. It's just I gave up on it temporarily. I had queried about 8 or 10 agents, and then everything hit, and I went, okay, I think I'm gonna just wait. Waited this long, I'll wait a little longer.
Yeah, you mentioned New York. I'll have to say that Dave's favorite agent was not in New York. That's not necessarily, I wouldn't limit yourself, especially
right. That's true. No, I'm not.
Yeah, the woman that I heard speak was from Dykstra, and she was great. I mean, the other thing I do for looking for agents is pick up a book or look on Amazon and do search inside the book for the word agent, for books that you like, that you think are similar, or if you've got blurbs from people.
Right, that's what I do. And Query Tracker is fabulous. And actually, I met an agent from Dykstra at the Fallbrook conference just before the shutdown. And although she didn't handle what I wrote, she gave me a name and I sent it to that person as well. But they were looking for, even at that point, they were looking for a particular thing that my book didn't have, as far as they were looking for, again, an underrepresented voice. And I was, so.
Well, no, the lady that at Tor.
Yeah. She can't recommend agents.
Oh, okay, that's not good. She
can't. We already had this discussion. She
okay,
said, I can't. She is precluded by ethics from doing
that.
But she said, but when you get an agent, before you sign, you email me and you say, so I'm thinking about signing with so-and-so. And she says, and from my response, you will know what I think of that.
Well, okay.
So I thought that was kind of a nice thing. We had to sit down at San Diego Writers Conference for about an hour and a half over my book in person.
Do you know what books she's published? Because you can go look inside those books and see who his agents of the books that she's.
No, that's a good idea. I don't know it. Where would I get that information as to who she was the editor for? I guess.
I don't know. Like that stuff that they put in Publishers Weekly. I would Google her, and just if you Google her name.
Yeah. Her name was Elise Capron. If you don't remember, Elise Capron, Capron.
Elise Capron.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about. Never mind. I'm Fallbrook Writers Festival.
But I'll look into that. I'm going to get tenacious again. I just, like I said, I backed off, and I think I'm starting to feel like doing it again. And I backed off and I started another novel, and I'm 53,000 words into a military espionage sci-fi. So, which is a completely different genre than my fantasy, which I have 3.5 books written on my fantasy series. The first one's ready. First one's ready. So, yeah, I just have never published a novel. So we'll see.
Well, but in a way, so you're primed for, it's like the overnight success that took how.
If I launch, I'm going to hopefully launch multiple books very quickly. That's my goal.
Well, and the other thing I forgot to mention, I talked about, awards help you, but one of the awards that people sometimes knock themselves out when they do self-publishing is the first time, like in mystery, for sure. I would imagine sci-fi has the same thing.
They do, yeah.
Debut author, you know, you only get one shot at that. So the fact that you haven't, you know, published anything. Also mention the fact that you have multiple books, because a lot of people, you know, they write that first book and it took them 10 years and then, or whatever, and then the agent and the publisher are going to be waiting for who knows how long,
Right.
you know. So the fact that you have all these books lined up and ready to go, that makes you even more marketable, and also shows that you can write a number of books. And wow, yeah, you got all the stuff going there for you got to get an agent. That's
I really do. I
yeah,
know.
but for sure.
And Dennis isn't on anymore, but Dennis bugs me about it every single week that I talk to him.
Well,
Says,
and then
have you been submitting to agents? Have you started submitting to agents? Have you done this? You know. So
well, you
I'll
can
get back
also
to it.
reach out, like send fan mail to these people whose books may or may not have been published by her, and say, who's your author? You know, the authors that I've reached out to, just like a little fan mail, loved your book, have been super nice. And,
Yeah, they usually are.
And usually they're pretty, you know, they may or may not want to share who their agent is, but
well, usually it's in the acknowledgments, and
yeah.
I troll that. And when I read a book, I troll that, and that's what I had started doing before the pandemic, was reaching out and saying, you know, I just read so-and-so's book, you know, trilogy or whatever, and felt that mine would be a good fit, you know, for you as well. And that's how I've been opening. I said my queries have been gone over with a fine-tooth comb and beaten the heck out of by multiple people. So I think my query is pretty solid. Not sure, I you know, but it's just not quite getting beyond. It seems like anyone who reads the first 10 pages, they want to see more, but it's trying to get them to ask for it, because a lot of them don't ask for pages. They just want a query and a synopsis, or, you know.
One thing is, you don't always have to heed that stuff. I know
I don't think it aggravates them if you don't submit what they ask.
I wouldn't put an attachment. I would definitely put, you know, a short, tight query, which sounds like you have. For sure, lead with the fact that this lady at Tor is asking for it, and that you have X number of more books completed in the pipeline. That's got to be in that first paragraph.
Okay, I'll revamp it.
If
Michelle?
you put it at the end, just paste it in. I think that's okay. They might read it. They might skip it, but.
Just a quick, I've been a acquaintance with Marge Maryeller.
Yeah, Marge.
Yeah, and she gave me we actually met through the Kauai Writers Conference. We shared a condo.
Okay.
And this was 2 years ago, and the book doctors were there. And how she got her agent was she, I think it'd be all right for me to relay this. She contacted them for they charge by the time that you spend with them, which is actually quite reasonable. And anyway, she met with Ariella, and her main question was, I need at least 7 agents that I can send to, and something about her query. But anyway, she immediately got an agent from that list.
She got an agent pretty quickly when she finished that book. I remember that. And it's a good book.
But she got it through, she got the names through, and I think it's called, I think her name is Arielle of the Book Doctors.
Okay. Thank you. I'll try to see if I can look that up.
Yeah, if you just Google thebookdoctors.com or whatever, they've got all kinds of videos and that, and their website. When you go to, there's a place where you can click on where, you know, they'll look at your synopsis, your query, whatever you want help with, and depending on the time you spend with them. But it was the woman, she's still an agent, but she doesn't actively work through the agency. Her husband has written a number of books, and they produced a book together on publishing and writing. They're a great couple. I really enjoyed them at the conference, but I've watched their YouTubes for a number of years and they're just so down to earth and funny.
I'll have to hunt them down. I do see, I was Googling the book doctors and it was like the book doctors, Pitch-a-Palooza, book doctors reviews.
Right.
Remedies, etc. So, okay, I'll look at it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much for everything.
It was so nice
Great-
seeing
great
everybody.
work. Bye-bye.
Sandy, I miss you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. And Mary, once again, you were fabulous. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. You guys are a fun group.
Talk to you guys later.
Okay, bye.
I keep forgetting I can talk.
Yes, you can talk.